For decades, nations have pursued nuclear programs, some peaceful, some ambiguous, and others outright weaponized. Iran is one such case. But to understand Tehran's calculations, we must look at the lessons it learned from its neighbors. Iran watched as Iraq was invaded, Libya was dismantled, and North Korea, through its nuclear arsenal, deterred a similar fate. The message was clear: without leverage, you are vulnerable. In 2015, Iran agreed to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, a deal signed even by the US, imposing strict limits on its nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. But Benjamin Netanyahu despised the agreement, and by 2018, he had successfully lobbied Donald Trump to torch it. Since then, the drums of war have grown harder and louder again. Recently, Trump sent a letter to Iran's supreme leader demanding the abandonment of its nuclear, ballistic missile, and drone programs. The implicit ultimatum: comply or face consequences. But what does the US really want? Let's be clear, this isn't about non-proliferation, it's about control. The US doesn't seek a nuclear-free Iran, it seeks a submissive Iran, a puppet government in Tehran, a vassal state that bends to Washington's will. I'm not here to defend Iran's government, but let's call this what it is: imperial bullying. The US operates in the Middle East not as a neutral actor, but as an empire, harassing, blackmailing, and threatening any state or group that refuses obedience. Submit, and we will deal with you. Resist, and we will destroy you. Is this the posture of a peacemaking president, or is it the posture of a leader beholden to the military-industrial complex, big tech investors, and Netanyahu's long-standing dream of reshaping the Middle East? Netanyahu's vision is no secret: a Middle East pacified through endless wars: Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, culminating in Iran's submission. The goal: absolute US-Israeli dominance over the region. This isn't peace, it is imperial domination under the guise of stability. A zero-sum game where only Washington and its allies win. We are told we live under a rules-based international order. But in reality, the rules are written by those with the biggest guns and the most nukes. Take Israel. Over 200 nuclear warheads, never signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty, yet faces no sanctions. Meanwhile, Iran, subjected to the most brutal sanctions, is constantly threatened for even potentially pursuing a weapon. So let me ask, why not demand the denuclearization of the entire region, including Israel? Is that too much to ask? Or are some empires and their client states simply above the law? While the world watches these serious developments in the region, a quieter but equally dangerous escalation has unfolded. In Lebanon, rocket launchers from the 1996 era have suddenly reappeared and fired rockets that can only be described as candy shells against Israel. Odd, given that Hezbollah has far more advanced systems today. The obvious conclusion is someone else is trying to restart a war. And the primary beneficiary is, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu. With Hezbollah's leadership decapitated and Syria's regime gone, cutting off its weapons supply, Netanyahu sees an opportunity to finish the job. Meanwhile, the US is bombing Yemen, not to protect shipping, but to force open the Red Sea for Israeli vessels. The Pentagon's strategy, if you ask me, is the same as Israel's in Gaza and Lebanon: mass civilian casualties to eliminate an alleged handful of fighters. Sound familiar? It should. This is the Dahiya Doctrine, Israel's post-2006 blueprint for total war against civilian infrastructure, designed to break resistance by making survival unbearable. And now the US and Israel are pursuing and pushing this brutality to the new extremes. The calculus in Washington and Tel Aviv is clear: crush Yemen into submission, no matter the civilian cost. Launch a second phase of war on Hezbollah, weakening it further while pro-US factions in Lebanon seize power. Expel Palestinians from Gaza to Somalia, Sudan, or Syria, completing the ethnic cleansing. And who is enabling this? Saudi Arabia and the UAE. They see Iran as a rival, but more importantly, they see US dominance as profitable. Billions in investments matter more than Palestinian lives. On the other hand, Iran now faces a brutal dilemma. Accept US demands, abandon its nuclear and missile programs, and watch its regional influence collapse, effectively admitting the Islamic Revolution failed. Or fight, risking economic destruction even if it inflicts heavy costs on the US. But here is the catch: if Iran negotiates, Tehran's legitimacy crumbles. Why have a resistance government if it bows to America? Yet, if it fights, the supporters of the Shah may see it as a window of opportunity for regime change. The clock is ticking. With Iran's currency in free fall and internal dissent rising, the risk of war grows by the day. The US doesn't just threaten Iran, by the way, it bullies its own allies. This week, for example, J.D. Vance went to Greenland and told Denmark, "You have failed Greenland, the US will protect it instead." Translation: we want Greenland. The excuse: Russia might attack us. But the US is already cooperating with Russia in Ukraine. If Moscow were really a threat, why not work together in the Arctic too? The truth: America doesn't need logic, it has power. And it uses that power to meddle, invade, and dominate while its own citizens suffer from homelessness, bankrupting healthcare and education, and crumbling infrastructure. The hypocrisy is, of course, staggering. Rules-based international order for thee, but not for me. The US and Israel aren't fighting for security, they are fighting for total control. And they will burn entire nations to get it. But empires fall when they overreach. Will this be their moment of collapse? Or will the world keep bowing to the bully?